I almost gave myself a heart attack over there when stuff stopped working. Ah. Anyway, hello, everybody. Welcome to another stream. My name, of course, is Hexblade, your head guildmaster and chief barista. Words. I don't know, man. It's been a rough day. You know what we should do, though? Learn. Learning is important, you know? But anyway, it is Friday. Congratulations on making it for another day, or another week. I hope you guys will enjoy your weekend. But, you know, before that, we got last-minute learning to do. This will be on the test, so don't test me. Anyway, let's... I like, while I was, like, doing all my stuff on my days off and jazz, I, like, updated my stream and stuff. It was cool. Like, on Thursday, I think I, like, changed some stuff up. So the chat, and I think the only thing is the alerts aren't gonna... Oh, whatever. I'm doing stuff behind the scenes to make things a little bit easier. That's all I need to say. Anyway, let's get started. We have funny things. We have fun things to look at. Why is this never... Hold on, come on. Oh, right. What are we finding out tonight? We're finding out things. Oh, come on. Capture the window. There we go. I was wondering why it wasn't capturing. That was weird. Anyway. What was the things we were finding out? Let's see here. What did I post? I keep forgetting what I post. Ah, funny Nintendo patents. The children want Quake. Motocross. Screwdrivers. Funny processors. And a big nut. This is all accurate wording. Also, oh, Legos and pudding. I forgot about Legos and also pudding. Not Legos in pudding. But yeah, let's get this on the road here. What was the first one? Oh, this one's from Cell Shock. The problem with shooters and how Doomed fixed it. I have a feeling I think I know what this is, but we'll find out. I think I have muted. Yeah.
I was at a convention.
There we go.
In Atlanta recently for some things, and while I was there, I picked up a copy of Doom 64. I just started playing it recently, and it got me thinking of a couple of things that I'd like to present to you in video format. Oh, look at that! I just died, but thanks for that. It's all good. I'm good. I feel great.
I can feel the pain inside.
Okay, fine. No, I'm not great. The world's gone to shit. It cost me $138 to fill up my vehicle with gas. I hate literally every politician. I've lost my early 20s to a pandemic. PS5s aren't in stock. A homeless man called me a pimp. Everybody on the entire planet is sad. So screw it. Let's play video games.
Woo!
Okay, so here's what makes a good Doom like. Yeah, well, I mean,
Doom likes.
Can't really have a good Doom like without it being an FPS game, obviously. You know, it's not like we can reinvent the wheel. You gotta honor it, savor it even. Doom was the backbone of the FPS for years. Let's put some respect on that name.
Turn it up or lower my voice. Hold on.
Probably
I got
one
this.
of the first things you notice when playing a Doom like. There's a clear sense of power you get from single-handedly ripping and tearing your way through the armies of hell itself. Like, when I sit down and play Dark Souls, I'm playing for the soul-crushing challenge. I'm also usually debating suicide every time I reach Sin's Fortress. When I play Zelda, I play for its charming world, its unique cast of characters. I play for the puzzles. When I play Metal Gear Solid, I'm playing it for its rich and deep story. I play it for the revolutionary stealth mechanics. I play it to watch the ice in the glass melt. But when I play Doom, the only thing I'm there for is for satisfaction.
Kill.
There are few things in the world
per
as
minute.
satisfying
Bullets per
as
minute slow.
fast-walking through all your weapons while gunning down a demon boss, all while BFG Division is playing on full blast. I'm talking Frank 211, my guy. I think this is easily one of the most recognizable aspects of a Doom-like. Take games like Ultra Kill, for instance. Though that's more of a Quake meets Devil May Cry type game, I think it's close enough for comparison here. Any game that allows you to flip a coin and shoot it out the air to take down enemies is definitely leaning to the whole power fantasy aspect. Let's be real. But even besides that, just look at games like Turbo Overkill or Bullets Per Minute or Dust. Okay, yeah, so I'm gonna be real. I kind of just started ranting here, and I didn't really know how to end this segment naturally. So,
yeah, that's one way to put it, I guess.
how does one go about the act of perfectly encompassing the feeling of killing demons in hell? Well, lucky for you, Mick Gordon has already answered that question. Metal.
Chainsaw.
Time and time again, he has been providing us with some of the most hardcore soundtracks in all of gaming. The music needs to be real heavy and dark, and I'm talking ball-busting, high-octane.
What has Mick Gordon done?
There is no alternative. These games are power fantasies, and the soundtrack should reflect that in every way possible.
I'll leave this one here. Doom started 98 meets medical. Modern Doom is metal made with heavy synth. Like, so you get like a bit of like noise in there too, in order to get the tone out. All of that was synth. Maybe like one of them was a chainsaw. I remember one lead instrument being a chainsaw, but that was really about it. Yeah. Like, outside of Modern Doom, when I think about stuff like E1M1 or things like that, he did color a couple of old Wolfenstein. I might need to look into that then, because I don't remember what those sound like. I will see. Anyway, this is also important. Mick Gordon got screwed out of stuff. No. Please no. Please no things.
Momentum is so important here. Without this aspect, a Doom-like would very quickly just become like every other FPS. Slow, weighty, and downright sluggish. World War II shooters really warped our perspective on how players should feel when moving. Before we had motherfuckers walking around like they had two ice blocks duct taped to their feet. The gameplay should be fast and always moving. I'm talking Sonic speeds, man. There's honestly very few points in Doom that you have to slowly walk through an environment. When enemies are around, you're expected to use every tool at your disposal to achieve victory. And one of the most important tools at your disposal is your ability to dodge and maneuver your way into enemy range. Very key. Fluid movement.
I love the amount of effort put into this.
And with a good Doom-like or Doom clone, it needs to retain that sense of speed and constant movement the original was built around. After playing a good Doom-like, every other FPS you play should feel slower in comparison. Huh.
It does. Well, I hate it.
That's new.
Why is she here? She's friends.
I feel like a lot of people miss out on this talking point when bringing up good movement shooters, and I genuinely don't know why. At least for me personally, this is one of the most important aspects of, well, just game design in general. FromSoft is out here designing some of the most beautiful and clever levels in gaming history.
What's this?
But even looking at the original
Doom 3
you can
ass
see a level of forethought put into each and every creative decision that works amazingly well within the limitation of, like, 2 megabytes?
2 axes.
My profile picture is 4 megabytes. When co-founder of id Software John Romero was designing levels for the original Doom, he had a list of 8 rules to strictly follow so that levels would look and play as good as possible. Here's a couple. I'd like to go over these in more detail in a separate video, so look out for that in the future. Number 1. Make areas flow so that the player revisits areas to better understand the 3D space. Most areas are designed in loops so that players will revisit areas they've previously explored.
Oh, no, I hate that, actually.
Dark areas and cramped and open areas.
Yeah.
Create several easily recognizable landmarks for easier navigation.
Please.
Make sure that if the player can see outside, he can somehow get there.
See that mountain?
When combined, these rules make an essential bible for level design within this genre
This is what we're talking about.
I feel really stands out even today among modern titles. Even still though, there's something important missing. You can spend all the time you want designing a good functioning environment, mapping out hallways to create the best path
Although
for the
somehow
player.
is usually secret.
But without
yeah,
something to do in
it's
that
kind of
level, what's
lame.
the purpose? Well, I mean, I guess Doom solved this problem pretty quickly. When in doubt, just throw some demons in it. But really,
Demons.
what's a Doom level without all the hordes of demons to tear through from top to bottom? It's important for a game's cast of enemies to never get stale. I ran into this issue a lot with Breath of the Wild, where that game was vast
Doom
and
is
open-ended with
Doom
enemy
is one of the
encounters,
most
which
Christian
do allow
games.
for a
Yeah.
great variation in the amount of solutions there are for winning a battle. I felt as if there wasn't enough variation in the enemies themselves. The game takes place over a wide area of land, and it just doesn't make sense for every part of Hyrule to just
Zelba.
have the same bunch of moblins and bokoblins. Enemy designs should reflect the area that they're in and provide visual representation for the story that you're trying to tell. Doom does this pretty well though. For example, did you know that in Doom, the only enemy type that drops ammo for your weapons are the zombies? Which obviously makes sense considering that former humans are the only enemies that actually make sense to drop ammo. The
That's
designs of
cool.
these monsters is rooted in a key element that makes each design unique and work well within the established mechanics of the game. The Lost Soul enemy type is another good example of making the design work within its intended purpose. It's literally just a floating, flaming skull, and it has
And it
an
screams
extremely
at you.
recognizable silhouette, so it can instantly be recognized upon encounter.
This guy
These
really
things
does fully
usually
animate
travel
his
in packs or
avatar
fly
during
towards
this
and
whole
rush
time.
the player at
Good
high
for him.
speeds. But the thing about them is that they only rush you in straight lines, so if you dodge an incoming attack, the Lost Souls will go careening into the nearest wall or surface. They also have very little health, so dealing with them is very quick. But you see what I mean, right? They have a very simple and explicit purpose that is instantly readable to the player. No tutorials needed on how to defeat these guys, just quick in the moment thinking aided by good and simple design. Also, I should add, reskin mechanics are not new mechanics. Mechanical design for enemies is important and can be used very well to instill a sense of progression within the player. Enemies should have well-rounded and distinct behaviors and mechanics that let designers compose fun and satisfying combat scenarios that challenge the player. Speaking of interacting mechanics between the enemies and player, let's move on to our final section of the video, the combat.
Oh my god. No. This is just a bit for a video. This is really good.
Doom is well known for its memorable weapons. Think the big fucking gun, the super shotgun, the unmaker, the rocket launcher, the chainsaw man. Every weapon should be interesting and change how you approach taking down an enemy. Give players a toy box and let them go wild. Puzzles and item gathering tend to get a little tedious in boomer shooters, so if you want to give a new item, make it a big event, but without stopping the game too much. A great example is getting your super shotgun back in Doom Eternal. You're dropped into a pit, kill all the enemies, then you take control of a revenant and have it retrieve your super shotgun. It takes a simple situation and adds flavor to it by creating a memorable gameplay experience with a fucking awesome ending. I also think it's super important to pay attention to the sound design here when it comes to these types of games. Every gun should sound meaty, hefty, fucking big. Just helps, you know? The other aspect of Doom combat comes into play with the game's melee combat. Nowadays, Doom likes of all shapes and sizes have found new and interesting ways to iterate on this mechanic, but stepping back a bit and taking a look at Doom, the first one, sets a good baseline for what makes melee in these games work. In the original Doom, your fists were about as strong as the pistol, nothing too crazy, but enough to get the job done when you're low on resources and are in a tight spot. However, if you found the Berserk power-up in a level, your character flies into a blinding rage, coating the screen with red. With this power-up active, which lasts the entirety of the level or until you die, your fists do significantly more damage, about 10 times stronger, and with this power-up, melee combat becomes one of the most fun ways to play the game.
Murder. Murder.
Since the dawn of the Doom-like, we've gotten a bunch of crazy takes on the genre. I don't have enough time to go super in-depth with all of them, but real quick, here's some of my favorites. I'll try to stick to recommendations I haven't seen in other videos, so hopefully you can come out of this with a new game to play.
Ultra
alright.
kill.
Boom. Forgive me, Father.
Okay.
A cool dark retro horror FPS with a really cool art style. It reminds me a lot of the Darkest Dungeon visual style. This one's great if you're really into Lovecraftian type horror. BPM, bullets per minute. A rhythm action FPS roguelike where everything from running, jumping, to shooting must be done to the beat of the music. This game's really cool and satisfying once you get into the groove of it. Dusk. This one absolutely nails the 90s retro FPS style. The atmosphere in this game is incredible, a perfect blend of a badass power fantasy mixed with an unnerving sense of dread.
That's just good.
Gunplay feels tight and solid, and overall a pretty good game. I've been working on this video for a while now, and it took longer than initially expected because I sort of moved across the country in the middle of making this. There was a bunch of stuff that I wanted to talk about, but either couldn't find a good place to put it, or I'm saving it for another video. So if you enjoyed this, I'd really appreciate a like and a sub. Also, for those of you who stayed till the end, here's a Steam key for Doom Eternal. There's only one, so the first person to see this, I imagine, will get the code. So better be quick about it.
That's a subscription. I tried BPM. I played the demo. Did not like it. Because for me, the problem was is that I could move. I would need to be... I mean, hold on. I would be rewarded for being on the beat, but the enemies are hitting me off beat. So I'm now at a disadvantage, and it kind of sucked. That's how I felt about it. Okay. Next video is about this... about a certain funny Nintendo patent that came before the Nintendo Switch that everyone thought was like a real thing. I think it's like one of my favorite things.
In the early 2010s, Nintendo was having a crisis.
That's one way
The
to put
newest
it.
handheld at the time, the 3DS, had slow sales as the rise of more powerful mobile devices challenged Nintendo's handheld gaming dominance, and the Wii U was failing to live up to the huge expectations set by the original Wii. Nintendo was in desperate need of a new piece of hardware, something that could deliver fresh experiences and satisfy millions of gamers worldwide. Nintendo's top executives came up with a plan to give life to the rapidly aging 3DS hardware by creating an all-new hardware revision with long-requested features along with a huge boost to the console's power. This console, codenamed Project Snake, was released in late 2014 as the new Nintendo
Project
3DS.
Snake?
But what fans didn't know
I've
at the
never
time
heard
was
that
the
one.
new 3DS was just one of the many ideas Nintendo was working on to expand their console lineup.
Ooh.
Since 2012, a team within Nintendo have been secretly working on a completely new DS model in partnership with the European tech company ST Microelectronics. But
Okay.
even after creating several working prototypes, early software, and detailed technical plans, the project was suddenly dropped in late 2014, only to be replaced by Project NX, the project that became what we know today as the Nintendo Switch. This is the story of Project Indie, Nintendo's lost console. Welcome to RGD.
I still love that really dumb, the dumb fake thing, the dumb fake Switch.
In 2018, Nintendo was hit with a huge data breach when Zamis Clark, a former security researcher for the antivirus company Malwarebytes, hacked into their internal network. This event, which came to be commonly known as
The Giga
Nintendo
Leak,
Giga
baby!
revealed gigabytes of internal documents, emails, and source code from Nintendo and their partner companies. But while many
Sup,
finds
Yuri?
from the Giga Leak received
Pass the
extensive
Yuri.
press coverage, one portion was mostly overlooked. In the file documents.7zip posted online in December of 2020, dozens of internal documents from Nintendo's security team can be found, including detailed descriptions of the methods used to prevent piracy and hacking on consoles like the 3DS. But inside this archive, next to folders full of confidential security documents about hardware like the new 3DS and the Amiibo reader, there is a folder with a name which translates to Indie Review. Inside this folder, there are hundreds of technical documents made by both Nintendo and ST Microelectronics, including a series of
wow.
data sheets for a device called the Mont Blanc. The technical info in these files describes the foundation for a game console with capabilities roughly in between the 3DS and the Wii U. While these are technical documents that don't really give us a good idea of what the console would have actually looked like, we can find interesting bits of information, like how the console would have used game cartridges, would have included multiple cameras similar to the 3DS and DSi, and would even have a USB port, something which would have been a first for a Nintendo handheld. While it's hard to know for sure, since the files in this folder were mainly focused on the security aspects of the system and don't include a general overview, it seems like the Mont Blanc was the name of the chip powering the console, which itself was codenamed Project Indie. Looking closer into one of these datasheets, we can see that Project Indie would have carried over many features from the 3DS, like dual displays with a touchscreen, a 3D display, motion sensors, and the ability to capture 3D images and videos.
This is better than I was
However,
expecting.
a
This is
closer look
cool.
at the diagram present in this datasheet reveals a handful of unique features exclusive to the Indie.
Yo,
There's
GPS?
mentions of Bluetooth support, meaning that this console possibly would have been able to pair up with external wireless controllers and other accessories, just like the Wii, Wii U, and the Switch. But unlike the Wii and Wii U, Indie would have also supported audio devices like speakers and headsets. Despite the Switch eventually supporting Bluetooth speakers and headsets 4 years after its launch, the Indie was seemingly going to support these devices from the very start. Another unique feature seen on the diagram is GPS support, which has never been seen on any Nintendo console before or since. With
What would that
Nintendo's extensive
do?
track record for using their console's unique hardware features to make new types of games, one can only imagine what they might have planned to do with GPS on a handheld. A separate document also reveals that Street Pass and Spot Pass, the 3DS services which let you connect with other players nearby, would have made a return. With the addition of GPS, maybe Nintendo would have expanded these features by allowing players to still interact locally even if they weren't walking around with their console, or by giving out rewards for visiting certain areas. The same document also goes in depth about support for AR, with the Indie being able to read AR cards just like the 3DS. Maybe with the combination of these
I still have my
and GPS
AR cards. I have
capabilities,
not
Nintendo
opened
might
them.
have had some kind of outdoor AR game plan for this console. Think Pokemon Go, but for the 3DS. There were also plans to allow voice and video chat in games, something which Nintendo has infamously been avoiding with the Switch.
Right.
As a successor to the 3DS, this console would have had backwards compatibility with 3DS games using a chip connected over the PCI Express interface, the same interface which is used to connect devices such as PC graphics cards.
Yo, wait,
While the
PCIe?
Switch has this interface too, it's only used for debugging and for the Wi-Fi card. But by far, the most unique
Yo.
feature mentioned here is that this console would have had the ability to output games to a TV just like the Switch. But instead of using a plastic dock with an HDMI cable to do it, the Indie would have streamed games wirelessly to a TV using Miracast.
Nope.
Miracast
No.
is a
Out.
protocol
No.
that lets devices
No.
wirelessly
No.
cast
No.
video to a
Bad. Bad. No. 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 Miracast sucks.
display. It was briefly popular in the early 2010s, but fell into obscurity when technologies like Google's Chromecast took over. With Miracast, the player would have been able to seamlessly play games or watch videos on any compatible TV
No.
without needing any additional
No.
hardware like a dock. In fact, the Indie actually had its own video encoder chip, which would have not only handled game streaming, but it would have also been able to record games as well as the aforementioned video calling, with
Oh,
audio
buffer's
being
nice.
handled by the console's internal microphones. On the technical
I have my
side,
parents to
the
watch
Indie
stuff
was
with it. It's so
originally
bad. I'm
planned
like,
to use a
imagine
dual-core
playing
ARM
games on that?
A15 CPU,
No.
a CPU
That'd be
commonly used
awful.
in many smartphones and tablets from the early to mid-2010s. Around a year
okay.
later, its specifications were revised to a quad-core ARM A53 CPU, which would have made it as strong as a Raspberry Pi 3. Looking more into
That's
the
not bad.
console's specs, with a single gigabyte of RAM compared to the Wii U's 2 gigabytes, the Switch's 4 gigabytes, and the 3DS
Playing Smash lobbies on Miracast.
128
Oh,
megabytes, it
imagine.
is very clear that the
It'd be a
Indie really
multi
was meant to
tournament.
be in between the 3DS and Wii U in terms of power, despite clearly intending to be more of a very powerful.
It would make more
handheld
sense if it was a
rather than
multi
hybrid
tournament.
console like the Switch ended up being. Its screen resolution matches with the recurring theme of the console being right between the Wii U and 3DS in both power and capabilities, with it having two 480p displays for both screens, the same
Okay.
resolution as the Wii U's gamepad, and twice that of the 3DS.
Wait, the Wii U
The
gamepad was
console's GPU
480p?
is oddly described as being something
It was
called a
nice.
decaf latte. It sounds like a strange name, but the Wii U's GPU chip was codenamed
Code
Latte,
Latte.
and the Wii U itself's codename was Cafe.
Yeah.
So the Indie's GPU would have been the Latte GPU used in the Wii U, but without the Cafe, making it a decaf latte. These documents even show how Nintendo was testing this out by using a version of the Wii U's GPU on a separate card, similar to how one would use a PC graphics card in a desktop computer. With the Wii U's GPU being rather impressive even today, being able to run great-looking games like Mario Kart 8 at a smooth 60 frames per second, it seems like the Indie would have had quite a bit of GPU power, possibly as much as the Switch, if not more. And as mentioned before, indie games would have supported stereoscopic 3D, so if you're a fan of Nintendo's 3D, it's easy to see how much of a big deal it would have been to have games that look like this in 3D. One particularly special feature is that, according to this document, the Indie would have had the ability to convert itself into a development console. Development consoles are special models of game consoles which are used by game developers. Unlike regular consoles, they have the ability to run games and software which haven't been officially released by Nintendo. Traditionally, Nintendo has always locked down their consoles to prevent players from running unauthorized software, so if you want to make your own games for a Nintendo system, you either have to
The
sign up
Almanac
for
has
Nintendo's
begun,
developer website and pass the approval process, or use Homebrew. Nintendo still doesn't let most independent developers publish games on the Switch, and even if you do get approved, you still have to buy a development console at a significant markup from the regular retail price. It seems like Nintendo might have allowed anyone to convert their own indie into a development console, possibly for a fee like what Microsoft did with the Xbox. The switch from consumer to development console would have been done by burning a digital fuse that permanently converts the console into a development unit, making the console function exactly like one of those expensive specialized consoles sold to game developers. Nintendo could have even had an official platform.
Actually, now I want
for
coffee
game
flavored.
development, which would have been a
Thermal
major
paste should not be
breakthrough for the
edible,
company.
let alone coffee
Sadly,
flavored.
they've completely forgotten about this idea.
I disagree.
Switch, which doesn't even have a proper web browser to allow people to make homebrew browser games as was done on previous systems. So with all of these unique features, why was the indie never released or even announced to the public? Well, digging even deeper into the various documents found in this folder, the full story of the indie starts to unravel. The system's main chip was apparently in full production and already had some prototype software written for it, but even these very detailed technical documents were still undecided about some aspects of the indie, most notably the question of if it would be dual screen or not. It appears Nintendo was considering several possibilities for the indie's screen, including one with a single HD display with an 800p resolution, similar to the Switch's 720p display. It also looks like at one point, Nintendo was considering giving the indie screens that were capable of playing games at
120
frames per
FPS.
second, something which has never been seen on any traditional handheld before or since, and is only just now starting to become common on devices like
Imagine
smartphones,
Nintendo
with the
games
vast
running at
majority of
120 frames per
computers,
second.
TVs, and other devices only supporting 60 frames per second. This may have been scrapped due to the potentially high costs of implementing such advanced.
Although I'm pretty sure 120 would just be 60 times 2 for 3D, so... yeah.
Screens, and the potential difficulties that may arise from developers making games run at 120 frames per second. While it seems obvious that the indie would have been a new member of the DS lineup if it was going to have multiple
120
screens,
is 60
the
for
indie
each
technical
eye.
Documents mention multiple possibilities,
Which is
for what
actually
kind of
really good. That
displays
means
the
it's
console could
3D
have,
at 60 frames per
including some
second?
which
That sounds
only had a
dope.
single screen. So what would the indie have looked like with only one screen? The answer might be found in a rather unusual place. In early 2016, during the months leading up to the announcement of the Nintendo Switch, the internet was filled with rumors about Nintendo's new console, known at the time as the Nintendo NX. One of the most infamous and widespread rumors about the NX came from this image, a picture showing a small, oval-shaped handheld which at the time was thought to be an NX prototype.
The dome.
This image was so well known and so
I was
authentic looking
there.
that Reddit users attempted to trace it back to its origin using the reflection of a tree in the background, with people claiming that was taken at one of Ubisoft's game development studios in Sweden.
I
Of
was
course, this turned out to
there.
be fake when its creator revealed that it was nothing more than a 3D printed concept. However, this oval-shaped design didn't just come up out of nowhere. Its origins were traced back to this patent filed by Nintendo in mid-2014, which shows a small handheld game console with controller grips, 2 analog
I hate this
joysticks,
patent
and a
so
single
much,
3D
dude.
touchscreen display, as well as some features like motion sensors, cameras, and the ability to insert a game cartridge, SD card, or even a SIM card into the same slot. A SIM card would have enabled cellular connectivity features, allowing you to access the internet and online features from anywhere
I
on
thought
the
that
console,
patent was
which could
for
have been
going to
used
be
with
for
some
the
GPS features.
Switch,
Sound
not
familiar?
the
The patent's text goes into further detail
other
about
stuff.
making
But
cutouts
let's
in
see.
the touch panel to allow for the sticks to be totally surrounded by a screen. In combination with the 3D display and touchscreen, this was described as a way to further immerse players into the game, since it would feel like your thumb was inside the action taking place on the screen.
But I
The patent
can't
describes a
see
technique
around
where
my
images would be
thumb.
shown around the sticks to make the player feel like they were directly interacting with the game and making things happen in real time right under their thumbs,
What?
such as showing special effects to represent an attack or an icon of a new item that you just picked up.
What?
It also describes some software features, such as
Okay.
the ability to store replays of your gameplay and share them with other
Not having
players,
transparent
as well as an
thumbs
early
is a
mock-up
skill
of what
issue,
might
yeah.
become the console's main menu, with a similar layout to that of the 3DS menu. This drawing shows what was meant to be a web browser screen, which could have rotated automatically based on how the console was held, similarly to a smartphone.
Okay.
While this patent looks interesting, it doesn't necessarily mean anything on its own. After all, companies like Nintendo file patents for dozens of concepts which never get made into a real product or even intended to be one. But as it
is that
turns
the
out,
the
this patent
Mario
might have
Sleep-
been the final
it's Mario
iteration
Sleep
of the indie
Tracker.
concept. Inside the file secure.7zip, which was posted online just a day after documents.7zip, there are several more technical documents, including this PDF file. It's a rather dry technical document about designing the Indie's hardware to prevent it from overheating.
I want to see it.
Just a few slides down, a diagram shows an oval-shaped console very similar to the design from the patent, and
Yo.
even more similar to the fake design from 2016.
Ye-
There is
hold
also
up.
what appears to be
Yo.
a photo or a 3D render of the prototype console. But what's more, throughout this document, the Indie isn't even called the Indie. It's called by its product name, the name it would actually be released as. And that name was the Nintendo Switch. Apparently, this concept started its life as a successor to the 3DS,
Okay.
became a single-screen oval-shaped console, and ended up being the very first iteration of the Nintendo Switch.
Yeah, that makes
Facts
sense.
and documentation related to the final Switch's security system uses the name New Switch to distinguish it from the oval-shaped old Switch. So in a way, the 2016 fake leak has some truth to it. It was just for a completely different rendition of the Switch hardware, which was about a year out of date. The final Switch does borrow some hardware from the Indie, however, as the Switch's anti-piracy chip used to protect the console's game cartridges against copying was originally developed for the Indie. So in late 2014, Nintendo completely scrapped the Indie idea and started work on the Nintendo NX, the console that would eventually be released as the Switch. But why would Nintendo scrap a project that had been 2 years in the making and replace it with something completely different while keeping the exact same name for the product? To answer that, we have to look into Nintendo's history during the time period when they were working on the Indie. Nintendo was struggling financially with the slow sales of the 3DS and Wii U, and investors were starting to demand that they go in a new direction. In the time period from 2013 to 2015, while the Indie went through its phases of development, Nintendo started to make several major corporate and cultural changes, unifying their console and handheld development teams and eventually all of their game development studios into one entity, building a new office, delving into the world of mobile games, and putting a greater emphasis on games with concepts made to appeal to Western fans. All of these changes resulted in what began its life as a straightforward 3DS upgrade, turning into a novel new concept with a focus on the ability to play games on your TV, which was replaced with what's basically a mid-range tablet and a plastic dock. And since then, Nintendo has never really been the same. Satoru Iwata, the president of Nintendo from 2002 to 2015, was a passionate programmer and gamer who was known for getting directly involved with the development of various titles and interviewing the developers in his Iwata Asks series. After his passing in July of 2015, he was replaced with Tatsumi Kimishima, a corporate executive with a relatively normal business background without any prior connection to Nintendo's products. Kimishima has since been replaced with Shuntaro Furukawa, another businessman with a similar background who, while he did have a personal connection with Nintendo by growing up playing Nintendo games,
do you like video
he had the same close connection to games and game development that Iwata did. The difference in passion and personal connection to Nintendo products and gaming as a whole between Nintendo's leaders clearly shows, as during the time period after Iwata's passing in 2015, Nintendo's products took a major overall shift. For example, look at the Switch compared to Nintendo's previous consoles. The console itself is relatively thin, brittle feeling, and made from a generic smooth plastic. This also extends to the UI, which is flat and simplified, with a lot of elements present in its predecessor seemingly gutted or reduced. No menu music, no help cats or music birds, just a basic, generic interface that doesn't even have color options. Beyond appearances, the console itself also feels generic. From the online service costing money for pretty much the same technology that the Wii U offered for free, to a recurring subscription service to play classic games, no microphones or cameras, no web browser, and no creative or fun applications like Flipnote. Even the Mii Maker is rather sterile feeling and hidden away in a settings menu. The Wii U had the best online system Nintendo has ever created, having things such as the ability to add other players by name, message and video call with them.
No one did the message or video calling.
Integrated right into the main menu of the console and integrated with games.
Miiverse.
It was a step up from the Wii before it in every
Hi,
single
Lunar.
way. The Switch throws all of this out the window, using friend codes instead of usernames, and having no way to communicate with your friends and other Nintendo players, instead being relegated to a very limited and bare-bones app for your smartphone. With all of this in mind, it's interesting to think about what the original Switch could have been, a console which combined the 3DS and Wii U, taking aspects from both while adding its own things to the mix. The Indie might not have sold as well compared to the Switch due to its less powerful hardware, but the Indie still felt like a Nintendo console, with all of the charm and unique features that helped consoles like the Wii and DS succeed despite their weaker hardware. Even though Nintendo in the years since Iwata's passing has changed drastically, thanks to the Giga Leak and the efforts of those working to preserve Nintendo's secrets and make them available to the public, we are allowed a glimpse at how things could have been, and this secret part of Nintendo's history is able to live on in the eyes of the general public.
That is, it's
For
such
more
a funky
information
looking
about
thing.
The scrapped console and other lost pieces of Nintendo history, check out the RGD wiki at wiki.raregamingdump.ca. We hope you enjoyed the video, and we'll see you next time.
That was a good video. I was actually...
Thank you for watching the video.
I, in fact, knew nothing about, what the hell? I in fact actually knew nothing about Project Indie, so that was pretty good. That was very interesting. I did not know that. All right, and that's also another subscription for me. Also, okay, we're gonna be. Are you guys ready to go into the weeds, like the real weeds of knowledge? We're going to be listening to the history of a screwdriver, of the screwdriver. Are you ready? This is already pretty top tier. Let's see how this goes.
See from the start here, I'm not the most handy guy. I know which end of the hammer to hit with, but I'm not much more use around the
I
house
feel like
than
you
that.
need
But
to
even
finish
I
it. But
own quite a lot of these
listen, at the
screwdrivers
same
here. I mean,
time,
after all, it's one of the
it's
most
under
common
the time
tools
period,
in the
so it's all
world.
good.
Half your house is put together with screws, and you got to hang up your hat somehow, right? I would venture to guess that virtually everybody that watches this owns at least one screwdriver.
I think I have that exact
If you
screwdriver.
are a viewer in Canada,
Like at my
you're
desk
very
right now.
likely to own a type of screwdriver that viewers outside of Canada are very likely to have never seen or even heard of in their life. And the reason that Canada has its own kind of screwdriver has to do with a really unique point in history where a group of technologies came together to drive a whole bunch of innovation, but that innovation was impacted by powerful world events at the time. Things like the Russian Revolution and the First and Second World Wars and the powerful personality of Henry Ford. The great debate between the Robertson and the Phillips head screwdriver is history that deserves to be remembered.
Now I'm
The
already
idea of a
so
screw
interested.
that is an inclined plane that spirals around a central shaft is ancient. The earliest known uses were a water pump that might have been invented in Syria to irrigate the hanging gardens of Babylon, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, in the first millennium BC. The device was in use in Egypt at least by the 3rd century BC when the Greek mathematician and engineer Archimedes of Syracuse saw and described one. The device was later incorrectly attributed to Archimedes and is commonly called the Archimedes
screw.
Screws were also used, at least since the Hellenistic period, to drive presses for, say, pressing olive oil or pressing grapes for wine. But screws were not used as fasteners like we use them today. Without industrial methods, they simply would have been far too expensive to make.
Did we
A number
watch
of
that?
other methods, including
We did not watch
dovetails
a
and
video
dowels,
about
were used in fastening,
Ford's
as
weird
well as, of
company
course,
town.
the much more easily produced nail. Screws as fasteners were not apparently produced until around the 15th century. The earliest known mention is in a late 15th century manuscript. Their initial use was as a fastener for parts of medieval jousting armor and, in nearly the same period,
What?
for early firearms. The wheel lock
Okay.
uses an internal spring to drive a piece of iron against a piece of pyrite to produce a spark to light the powder. The pyrite wore out quickly and so had to be replaced often, and a screw was thus used, since it could easily be screwed in and out. The earliest screwdrivers were built to service these weapons, and they were called either a screw turner or a turn screw, and they had a pear-shaped wooden handle, and otherwise looked a lot like a modern flat-headed screwdriver.
That's kind of lame sounding.
These screws and
Turn
screwdrivers
screw.
would have been custom-made and used on very expensive devices like wheel locks and jousting armor, and so screws were not for the common folk.
Screws were
In
bougie.
1760,
Huh.
brothers Job and William Wyatt of Staffordshire patented a screw-making machine that used a file to cut in the threads following the pitch of a lead screw. This allowed mass production of screws and was a precursor to industrial mass production machines. The idea
Oh, wow,
of
this
using
is before
a
mass
lathe
production.
of some sort to cut threads was variously improved upon until a process for cold rolling threads was perfected in the 1880s. But virtually all of these screws used just a
cold
few
rolling.
turning methods. Either a hexagon or square that was turned externally, or a flat slot cut to turn internally. And as anyone who has ever used one knows, flat-headed screws and screwdrivers have their problems. There were many alternatives proposed and even patented
job
in the
being
latter
a
half of the 19th
Oh.
century, but most were not
That would
easily
suck.
manufactured, and slotted screws still prevailed. But solutions were on the horizon. Peter L. Robertson was born in Haldimand County, Ontario, Canada in 1879. A tinkerer, Robertson produced a number of inventions, including a new design for cufflinks. and even
Changed
a
the
better
chat
mousetrap.
recently. I changed the font
In
and changed
1905,
out
received a
some
patent
stuff
in
on
Canada for a new design of a corkscrew that centered itself on the bottle.
it. Ooh.
Around the turn of the century,
Oh,
Robertson was working through
the
Eastern
corkscrew.
Canada as what was called a high pitch man, meaning a traveling salesman for a Philadelphia tool company. High pitch men would sell their wares, say, on a street corner at a county fair, calling out their wares. And among the things that he was selling was a device of his own design, Robert's 20th century wrench brace. was a multi-tool that could be
Wrench.
used as a monkey wrench, as
Brace.
a brace, as a bench vise, as a screwdriver, and as a rivet maker. And he called it the greatest tool on earth. And if all that sounds impressive, there were actually several multi-tools that were very similar, patented in that era.
How do you use something as a screwdriver and a bench press? What? I need to see what this device looks like. I can't even imagine it in my own head. Please.
But it was in demonstrating another tool, a spring-loaded screwdriver, that gave Robertson his most famous idea. While demonstrating the screwdriver, which was flat-bladed, the blade slipped and seriously cut his hand. That gave him the idea of a new type of screwdriver head that was less likely to slip or
Stab
out.
you.
This is not a new concept. There was a great variety of new screw head designs patented in the latter
I
half
would
of
love
the
a
19th century.
screw that would not
Most never went
stab me.
anywhere, largely because of difficulties in manufacturing, but also because virtually everyone already owned a flat-headed screwdriver.
Right.
In fact, the basis of Robertson's idea, a square-headed screw and driver, was not new. In 1875, Alan Cummings of New York City had invented a patent for a screw that used a cavity, either a square or triangle, rather than a slot, to address the same problem. Cummings'
Hey.
description noted, "It is well known that the ordinary screw head provided with a slot is very susceptible to injury, caused mainly by the slipping of the screwdriver from the slot when the screw is being set home in wood or metal. By omitting the usual slot and using the proper shaped cavity and screwdriver, perfect safety is ensured to the metallic cap." But Cummings'
That works,
design
yeah.
had a flaw. The way that you made the cavity that the
Yeah,
screwdriver
we
fit
should watch
into was by stamping it with a die, and stamping it
The Low Spec
deeply enough
Gamer
that the screwdriver
video
would
is
set
in the
inside
queue.
it would deform or weaken
So we
the
will
screw
see it.
head.
Just I don't know when. It's in the queue though.
Robertson had a better solution, for which he applied for a patent in 1907. His screw tapered the sides
Alright,
of
what
the
is
square
this
gradually down to a pyramid shape. This not only prevented the head from being deformed, but actually helped align the metal grain, as he explained, knitting the atoms together for greater strength.
That honestly is a nice pick, I'm pretty sure.
It had the added advantage of less waste, since the slot of a slot-headed screw was usually cut out, losing a bit of metal and weakening the head of the screw. Because it was less likely to cam out, you could use more torque with the Robertson screw and driver. As it was self-centering, it could be used with one hand, whereas a slotted screwdriver usually required two. The head of the screw was less likely to deform, and the Robertson screwdriver was much better able to still remove the screw if it did. It also worked better than a slotted screw if the screw had been painted over. Robertson's screw and driver were particularly attractive to furniture makers and boat builders, where it was more of a problem if a flathead screw cammed out because it would damage the material around it, damage the value of the product. But perhaps best of all is that Robertson's screw could be cold formed. That is, because the stamp tapered down inside the screw, that meant that you could build the screw without ever having to heat the metal. Cummings' design, as ingenious as it was, probably was never made during its patent life because the screw simply couldn't be easily manufactured. But Robertson's design could be cheaply manufactured, in the millions. Calling his invention the biggest little invention of the 20th century so far,
Cute.
Robertson gained enough investors to open the P.L. Robertson Manufacturing Company Limited in 1908. He built a factory in Milton, Ontario, which gave him tax breaks and a $10,000 loan.
Hey,
Patent was
tax
approved February
breaks.
1909, and by then the company was already filling orders. Robertson was just 30 years old. While the Robertson Company described the initial years as hard, with local competitors even challenging their patent, the Robertson screw slowly gained adherence among boat builders and furniture makers. In 1913,
This is a
Fisher
giant
Auto
video
Body
explaining
opened a
what
factory in
Canadians are
Walkerville,
weird.
Ontario, making wooden parts for
Yeah,
the
this
Ford
is a
Model T.
long form video about weird
The Robertson
why
screw
Canadians
offered
are
a great
weird.
advantage for manufacturing. Fisher became one of Robertson's largest customers.
It's a very interesting
using
way
some
to figure out
700 screws per
Canadians
body.
are weird.
Robertson later designed a screw for metal to use on the all-metal body of the Ford Model A. Having been
Hey.
awarded international patents, Robertson saw the opportunity to expand abroad, and so he went to Gillingham, England, and established a company called the Recess Screw Company. He marketed to British industry
Okay.
using the slogan, "The screw that grips the driver." But his real plan was to manufacture screws in England, but sell them in Germany and
Okay.
Russia. And the First World War and the Russian Revolution foiled his plan. Recess screws turned to war production during the Great War and produced things like firing needles and hand grenade pins. But after the war, recess screws failed. There seems to have been several factors involved, including a glut of supply following the war and the actions of some unscrupulous investors, but Robertson resigned as the director of the company. But the company in Canada was still doing well, and Robertson looked to expand into the United States. He attempted to negotiate a deal with a manufacturer in Buffalo, New York, but the company wanted a say in manufacturing decisions. And Robertson, perhaps stung by his experience in England, refused to give up that control. Then Henry Ford came to the table. An analysis has shown that the use of Robertson screws in the Ford plants in Canada had saved $2.60 a car, a significant savings for a car that retailed for only $390 and which was being produced in the millions. Ford wanted to use Robertson screws in all his U.S. plants. But Ford wanted to say in production and an exclusive contract, and Robertson stubbornly refused to give up that control.
Why
When the deal fell
exclusive
through,
contract?
Robertson not only did not get the contract for the American Ford plants, but lost the contracts in Canada, almost a third of his business. After 3 failed
my
tries,
God.
Robertson decided to never try to license his screws outside of Canada again. But his marketing skills made his screws and drivers the screwdrivers of choice in Canada, even though just across the border of the United States, they're hardly known at all. But Ford was still using flat screws, which are even more troublesome on automated assembly lines, where if a screw cammed out, it cost time and slowed manufacturing. The solution started with a patent application in 1932 by John P. Thompson, an auto mechanic living in Portland, Oregon. Thompson's new screw design used a cruciform. Like the square-headed screw, this was not a new idea, but again,
Okay, this is
similarly,
looking familiar.
previous patents for screws using cruciform heads, as he explained in the application, push the metal ahead of the tool and so disturbs the distribution of the metal as to render the screw head extremely fragile. Thompson's solution was similar to Robertson's. By tapering the screw head, a star die could be used without distorting the metal, and again, stamping the tapered design made the metal actually stronger. Moreover, by tapering the screw, a driver could be used even if it was not the exact right size, and again, the new cruciform-headed screw would engage with the driver, making it less likely to cam out than a flathead screw. In 1933, when the patent was granted, Thompson assigned it to Henry Frank Phillips. Like Robertson, Henry
we got a
Phillips
name
had
drop.
been a traveling salesman. By the time the patent was assigned to him, he was the managing director of a mining concern, the Oregon Copper Company. It's not really clear why Thompson assigned the patent to Phillips. It might be that Thompson simply couldn't figure out how to sell it or couldn't find investors, but it also might be that he already had an agreement with Phillips when the patent was filed. But Phillips refined
he
the
just kind of
design and was granted more patents.
Just gave him it?
Unlike Robertson, Phillips
What?
did not intend to manufacture screws, but hoped to license the patents to manufacture and collect royalties. Not surprisingly,
Smart.
with the new invention, Phillips got a lot of rejections from companies who told him the idea lacked promise for commercial success. But eventually, Phillips convinced Eugene E. Clark of the American Screw Company of Providence, Rhode Island, to manufacture the design. By 1934, the screw was available for consumers. While the tendency to cam out could be troublesome for anyone driving screws, it was a particular problem for manufacturing, which even at that time was using power tools. Phillips' later patents application seemed to have recognized the advantage. A 1934 application said, failure of the slotted screw to retain the blade driver, especially in power-driven operations, is not only dangerous to the operator, but is likewise always injurious to the work. It was clear what market he saw for his design. In 1936, General Motors was invited to test the design.
Aye,
Phillips head
cars.
screw first went into use at GM, making the 1936 Cadillac. The advantages for industries large and small was obvious. Customers raved about the amount of work time saved. Within just a few years, virtually all U.S. automakers, including Ford, were using Phillips head screws. The airplane manufacturing and railroad industry likewise switched. By 1939, 20 companies had licenses to produce Phillips head screws. By 1940, 85% of U.S. screw manufacturers had a license for the design.
Oh,
The
wow.
company grossed more than 1.3 million adjusted dollars. While the Second World War limited foreign licenses,
Yo,
it established
nice.
the Phillips head screw as an industry standard among wartime manufacturers. The hundreds of thousands of planes and motor vehicles built by the U.S. during the war were largely screwed together using Phillips head screws. By the time Phillips' patents expired in the 1960s, there were more than 160 domestic licensees, and half again that number of foreign licenses. While Robertson had Canada, Phillips screws are, by industry estimates, by far the most popular type of screw everywhere else in the world. There's still a heated debate over which is better, the Robertson screwdriver or the Phillips-headed screwdriver, and that debate has only grown more heated recently as the internet and fair trade makes it easier to acquire Robertson screws and drivers outside of Canada.
Makes it easier for
In
people
general,
to complain
the
about it
Robertson
online.
screwdriver does grip the screw better, and that means that you don't have to use as much pressure to be able to turn the screw without it camming out, and it's less likely to strip the screw, which are both issues that bedevil common users of Phillips-headed screwdrivers.
Yeah.
But that ability to cam out actually offers an advantage for manufacturing. With a Phillips-headed screw, when the machine has set the screw, it will cam out, and that keeps it from overdriving the screw. And as an advantage at home, in a pinch, you can use a flat-headed screwdriver to spin a Phillips-headed screw, and you can't do that with a Robertson screw. So far, the Phillips head remains supreme pretty much everywhere but Canada, but the Robertson screwdriver has made significant inroads, especially among furniture and boat makers. And the discussion has become more convoluted as there are now many more alternatives on the market, some of which are compatible with existing drivers. Its patents for the Phillips head long expired.
What is this? Who made this? Who made this OBS logo as a screw? What is this? That I'm not commenting on. These I've seen. They're terrible. I've seen these in real life. They are terrible.
The Phillips Screw Company today develops and licenses some of those new types of screws and drivers. The Phillips-headed screw was so successful that it might have been too successful. In 1947, the federal government filed charges against Phillips and several manufacturers claiming that they had engaged in anti-competitive practices, including price fixing.
If it looks stupid, it's probably anti-repair garbo, probably. But also the thing I did see that two-hold screw was a panel for a maintenance panel, a maintenance panel for an elevator. So maybe I shouldn't have tried to open it. Maybe that one's there for my own good.
The eventual resolution in 1948 was a consent decree that reduced Phillips' ability to enforce its patents. The Robertson and Phillips screws were the culmination of the development of screw technology over a couple of hundred years, and they were two types that rose to the top in an era where there was a lot of innovation in the field. It's really ironic that the events of the First World War were part of the reason that the Robertson screw was never developed internationally, whereas events of the Second World War were the reason that the Phillips-headed screw was. And the relative fates between the two say that invention isn't about just the inspiration and, pun intended, drive of the inventor, but of a complex interaction with historical forces and powerful personalities. Things that can impact every tool in the toolbox. I hope you enjoyed this episode of The History Guy, short snippets of forgotten history between 10 and 15 minutes long. And if you did enjoy, please go ahead.
That was a very engaging time. That was really good. Did he call me a tool? Does that mean if you're from Canada, does that make you a tool? That's just a thought. That was a very engaging video about screws. Actually, no cap. All right. You guys ready for nostalgia? I have nostalgia for this one in particular. Yo, is a doll a tool? Dolls have screws, though. I think. Maybe. I don't know. Anyway. Nostalgia. I have nostalgia for this particular one. It's from LGR. It's Motocross Madness. I love Motocross Madness. I think I had a demo of this when I was a kid. I don't think I actually had the full version. But regardless, very good. Because of this one feature.
All right, that's all I wanted to do. But I guess I'll review the rest of it.
I love that. I love it so much.
Well, it's been around for 25 years, so hey, as good a time as any to talk Motocross Madness. Developed by Rainbow Studios and published by Microsoft in August of 1998. High-flying, wheelie-riding, off-road, overly hyphenated motorbike action. A dozen bikes and riders to choose from, 16 stunts to perform, 30-odd tracks, plus 8 rider multiplayer and a track editor to keep the fun going. As a 12-year-old fascinated by both the X games on TV and racing games on PC, Motocross Madness had my full attention back then as soon as I came across the trial version. And ever since, it's still the first thing that comes to mind whenever I think of developer Rainbow Studios. They've had a whole long legacy, of course, beginning with their founding in 1986 when they made interactive documentation software for hotels and whatnot. And before Motocross Madness, I knew them for games like The Hive and Deadly Tide. Two full-motion video shooters with an alluring flair for the dramatic.
Oh, FMVs.
But I most
Okay.
fondly remember Rainbow for MCM here, and its awesome big box cover with that blue-yellow sky gradient, and a dude 300 feet in the air about to lose a fight with gravity. A box that's become surprisingly difficult to find. And more copies of the games sold in a jewel case instead through third-party discount labels, or were bundled as an OEM disc distributed with a new PC, or came included as part of a boxed set like Racing Madness, which packed together the holy trinity of Microsoft's early Madness game universe from that late 90s period when the company was dumping cash into making PC games and peripherals.
They were fun.
So maybe you were introduced that way, or perhaps you were like
Hear me out,
and
they
you
were
just
fun.
played the trial
were,
version
like,
for like
really
8 months
fun.
straight before eventually grabbing a cheap copy on sale. Whatever the case may be, Motocross Madness found its way onto the hard drives of tens of thousands of PC gamers, and when you got it home, inside that impressive big box was not much at all.
It was a
In my
very
copy, all I
big
got was
box.
this promo disc with a free month of MSN and a bunch of trial software,
Yeah!
as well as the CD-ROM game itself. And the only documentation is a 13-page instruction booklet packed into the front of the case, briefly covering the main features
Yeah,
and
I miss big
gameplay.
boxes too.
Not a lot to see indeed.
Just a little
and
bit, though.
statistically, about 40% of you skip this part of the video regardless, so let's get to the dang game already.
I miss cereal boxes. Is that what they're called? Cereal box games?
After two brief logo animations
never
and
heard
a
that,
splash screen,
phrase
you're
before.
greeted with the main menu. No Motocross Madness specific intro videos, unusually enough. However, after entering your name, just idle a few seconds and the menu itself begins rocking out with FMV
Oh, games that came
goodness,
in boxes of
featuring
cereal.
the real-life
Oh, okay,
writers
yeah.
and stunts that inspired MCM in the first place.
Yeah, I know the ones you're talking about. Monopoly. Yeah, Chex Quest. All right, yeah, I know what you guys are talking about.
As mentioned on the back of the box, these come from a series of
yeah.
mid-90s VHS tapes titled Crusty Demons of Dirt. And wow, does that take me back. These kinds of VHS stunt and crash compilations of
What in
people
the-
being dumb were all over the place back then.
What?
I used to watch tapes with motorcycles, skateboard tricks, skiing and snowboard stunts, monster trucks, off-roading, and on and on. No surprise those ubiquitous flicks inspired the developers too. Anyway, from here you can start a single-player or multiplayer event, peruse the options, or open an external help file. Multiplayer
What?
is something we unfortunately won't be going into since the MSN Gaming Zone service it used is long dead as you'd expect, and while LAN play is still doable, I don't have that set up, and the only event you're missing is Moto Tag, which is just what it sounds like. So, single player it is then, and you're presented with 4 events: Stunt Quarry, Baja, National Race, and Supercross. Selecting any one of those lets you play either a single race, a tournament of races, or a
Practice mode.
with that last one discarding
5 of
all
them
timers
each
and
game, which is the
progression,
most video
letting you
game.
fart around consequence-free with or without
Sometimes
AI opponents.
These
And the game leaves it up
formative
to you
moments
as to
explain
how
a
you
lot.
play. Nothing is too set in stone. The number of laps, quantity of races, how many opponents, what kind of time limit, which track you'd like to race in which order. It's a lightly structured free-for-all with no real career and nothing crazy to unlock.
That's kinda
So,
cool
choose
that
a
there's no
model for your
unlocking.
rider and bike. Doesn't matter much because they're only skins, and maybe pop into the garage for some exceptionally unexceptional tuning.
Wow,
with
that's
3 engines and 6 vague sliders for suspension and tires.
what?
And with that, it's time for
I
madness.
can't even imagine what those do.
Oh yeah, the classic motocross madness experience right here. Wide open spaces with plenty of hills and valleys providing prime opportunities for high-scoring stunts and
Snowman's Sky
bone-crushing
racing
crashes.
motorcycle.
At least
This game
in
was better than
Stunt
No Man's
Quarry
Sky. At
mode,
least you had
which was
fun
always the
on
star of
the
show.
start off.
These massive open-ended maps were unlike anything I'd seen back when this came out, despite the total lack of trees, buildings, or defining landmarks beyond bits of uniquely lumpy terrain. It was sparse, but it was enough to get me spending hours screwing around, going fast, jumping far, and scoring high. Or sometimes I just ignored all that and rode around exploring. It was a map so large that it naturally made you want to reach the limits, which seemingly came in the form of these high cliffs barricading you inside the map. And yet, with enough speed
Whoosh.
and tenacity, you can actually ride straight up the cliff walls, which leads to one of my favorite undocumented features.
I think it's like... Yay. Never played this, but it feels nostalgic looking.
That good old out-of-bounds cannon.
Look at him go.
A source of boundless joy for anyone who had the pleasure of discovering it.
Doof.
Instead of an ordinary invisible wall, this unseen
this so
cannon
much.
at the map's edge blasts you off in the opposite direction, complete with cartoony sound effects. It's an unnecessary and delightful addition. Plus, it was a great way to see large portions of the map all at once and admire that draw distance. Or the fog, whichever one stood out the most. Yeah, Motocross Madness sure made me happy to have a 3D graphics card, especially since it won't even run without one installed. No software rendering here.
I love this stuff,
As the
man.
box proclaimed, 3D acceleration was required, one of the first games I remember seeing with such a statement. But being early to the 3D party means it's annoyingly picky about GPU, OS, drivers, and DirectX versions. For example,
Meow.
on Windows XP, I get
Oh,
nothing
God.
but corruption. With an NVIDIA 8800 GTS, it
Oh,
won't
no.
start at all for me on Windows 98 SE.
Oh, no.
And Windows 95 will only play with my Voodoo 3 under DirectX 7. And then it's still prone to crashing and slowdowns, so, you know, anytime I do get MCM working properly feels like a moment worth cherishing, especially now that I can take advantage of its more premium features. Things like Dolby Surround Sound, which took the already impressive sound effects and gave it greater depth
What is this
with
sound?
convincing spatial effects. But really, even in stereo, the game sounded superb, with real engine sound samples being mixed on the fly to convincing effect for 1998
What is that
anyway.
sound? Imagine
grab
being
some
that
headphones and listen to this.
I want that sound like as a joke. I think I really did like the sound because it sounded the motorcycle sound was really good.
Yeah, the way it's mixed with widened stereo separation and environmental effects really adds to the wide open feel of each environment.
It's
giving
it was a
sense of
really
place
good
that
effect.
few racing games did back then. It makes me actually prefer playing with the music turned off, despite how respectfully hard
Wow.
Mark Stratford's CD audio soundtrack goes. Another aspect I can now experience is its support for motion-controlled input devices like the Microsoft Sidewinder.
All right, this part
Pro,
went beyond
the
me.
game's
Like-
unofficially official controller.
What is
Or at
that?
least that's how it came across, considering how much cross-promotion there was.
Motion
From
sensing
mentions of it in
technology.
the manual to discs for the game included in the box the freestyle came in. The way this pad works is you essentially have two controllers in one, with a digital D-pad and buttons normally, but
Okay.
motion-sensitive analog controls for pitch and roll, rotating along the X and Y axis to change directions. 8 years before the PS3 6-axis. Fun stuff. In theory, anyway. Despite MCM and the freestyle being literally designed for each other, I find it far less precise and rather unenjoyable.
It looks
And
like
since
trying
so
to
much
use a
gameplay
Wiimote on some
relies on
shovelware,
balancing
honestly.
Your rider, which is controlled by the pitch
Yo, it's
of the
LGR. Hell
freestyle,
yeah, it's LGR.
It's downright irksome, especially on event types relying
One of my
on more care and precision.
talking
being
about
put
one of my
into your
favorite
riding
games.
efforts. On that note, the most forgiving event is Stunt Quarry. Do whatever stunts you like, wherever you like, within the allotted time and earn more points than everyone else. Sweet and simple.
There are no faces
The other
behind that.
three
It's just
events, though,
goggles.
are all more reliant on bike mastery and knowledge of each map, all requiring the clearing of checkpoints in a specific order to proceed. Baja is my favorite of these checkpoint race modes, with the same open maps as Stunt Quarry, now filled with checkpoint markers to pass through as fast as possible. You're free to take any path you wish. There's no set track exactly, but there's certainly an optimal route to discover, as you need to pass each checkpoint in a predetermined order. So, more than other events, Baja is about balancing your rider and bike using the lean controls and paying close attention to the topography to
Oh, Baja,
carve out
the origin
path
of the
least
blast.
resistance for top speed and
This is
fewer
where the
jumps.
This is where
It's tricky at first, but eventually becomes a sort of meditative
this entire plane used to be filled with Baja until they farmed it for Baja Blast, and look, it's now a dry desert.
experience where the unmarked dirt takes on a track
They
layout
sucked away
only
all the
you can
blast
see in your
from the
mind
Baja, and
once
now
you're
it's just
familiar enough
Baja.
with each hill, ditch, rut, and drop off of the terrain. Then you have National Race and Supercross, and well,
Oh,
these
this one
just
kinda
don't
looks
do
lame.
it for me. They never have, to be honest, being too claustrophobic and tight with the turns, at least for the way MCM's dirt bike physics function. So National Race takes place on the same type of lumpy terrain as before, but limited to smaller, more traditional track designs. Only now with immediate penalties if you go off course or cut past
Boo.
too much track, teleporting you back after 5 seconds.
That's kind of boring.
So a couple of crashes or off-course teleports means you may as
Salem,
well restart
hello.
the race.
Welcome,
since
welcome,
there's
welcome,
almost
everybody.
no chance of catching up to the on-rails
Ellie,
AI
can I get
drivers by then.
a shout
The same
out
goes for Supercross, which is by
for
far
my lovely friend here, Salem? Please, if you're paying attention, please. Anyway, hello, Raiders. My name, of course, is Alma Hexblade, head Guildmaster Chief Arisa here. Take a seat. We have space for all of you. Today is Finding Out Friday, our little video educational chill-out thing. So if you want to watch some videos or learn things, we were on a pretty good banger roll, honestly, today. So, actually, hold on. I don't think my mod is paying attention. Hello? Neon White! Yo! I love that game. Who's your favorite character? Who's your favorite character? There is a correct answer. And if it's not Neon Violet, we're not friends anymore. I'm waiting for your response. Also, motocross games? Yes, in fact, we are. The stream is not... You don't understand. The stream is not going to continue until I hear Salem's favorite game, favorite character. Unless you're not here anymore. Users in chat. Okay, you may not. Hi, Lunar. Why are you watching Salem's stream? Why are you back? You know what? Never mind. It's okay.
least favorite. Like, sure, riding inside a stone pyramid or underneath a huge stadium dome is neat.
Because you
and
mod there.
hearing the crowd go nuts whenever you wipe out is kind of fun at first. But they're all tile-based tracks that are significantly less interesting to look at.
Oh, look how cute
And
these
again,
are.
the way Motocross Madness controls makes it an exercise in frustration
Meow.
to complete any Supercross event in any position,
just seems
much
fun.
less with a podium finish. I've always preferred Moto Racer when it comes to dirt track racing events like this.
Oh, that's
that
a
game's
cool
speed,
game.
simplicity, and silly arcade physics model makes for a much more enjoyable time. Though I can imagine these tile-based tracks would be better
Does it give
online
the
against
3D
real
effects of it?
people.
Yeah,
making
this
real
is,
mistakes
early
instead
days of
the
3D.
cybernetically
This was pretty
enhanced
good.
super biker AI, especially on tracks of your own creation. And this is where the
Farts.
track editor comes in. This external program lets you build tracks on a grid using a selection of pre-made tiles for things like jumps, bumps, straights, and so on. Now, think Excitebike in 3D, before Excitebike went 3D on the N64. Tracks were also easily shared and downloadable online, with Microsoft themselves offering a
would've loved
selection
to-
of
yeah.
9 courses as free DLC, known as the Holiday Track Pack. Just a bunch of stuff you could make yourself through the track editor, but it wasn't nothing, and being able to download more content for a game at all back then was pretty novel. And that is Microsoft Motocross Madness. 2.5 decades later, still holds up in parts, fully falls flat in others, but to me the high points are high enough that I can happily go back to it and find a solid couple hours of
Flying into the
enjoyment.
Syncopter.
Flying
Yeah.
through the air and making your own path through huge sandboxy
I love this just
stunt
because
maps
of the
continues to be
environments.
good
They're
fun,
still my favorite
with
part.
or without any successfully performed stunts. And the majority
I didn't know how to
agreed
do
as
stunts in
the
the game,
reviewed
actually.
well with customers and critics alike, receiving positive scores and ample awards from enthusiast magazines and websites.
Oh wow, PC Gamer.
It was naturally followed up with the also excellent Motocross Madness 2 in 2000, which upgraded and added tons of great stuff, including trees to the terrain. Ooh, fancy.
Trees.
But even more noteworthy are the spiritual successors by Rainbow Studios like MX Unleashed, ATV Off-Road Fury, and the MX vs. ATV
I think I
series.
remember ATV
Built
Off-Road
by
Fury.
much of the same dev team and using some of the same tech as
I love this.
MCM, and even including the invisible cannon at the edge of the map. I was always annoyed the earlier Unleashed and Off-Road Fury games were only released on consoles, but in hindsight it sure made business sense on the publisher's part. The various MX and ATV games sold in the tens of millions, becoming far more successful than any of the Motocross Madness games ever were.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and there was also that goofy reboot with big-headed Xbox avatars in 2013. Sure, it had some fun stunts and kept the out-of-bounds canon tradition going, but if I recall, it
looks
was pretty average.
Kind of lame, actually.
I don't know, there's still something about the original game's simplicity and straightforward / predictably unforgiving physics. It never fails to induce in me a kind of racing flow state that's oddly addictive, and for that, I say Motocross Madness is late 90s PC gaming gold.
But yeah, same devs who made those games that you guys like. Honestly, once we
And if you dug this retrospect...
well, I mean, there's nothing there. What are you talking about? Oh yeah, this actually I should also show this one, but not now. This one's gonna be later, because I know this one was cool. All right, so next video I think was hey, yeah, that's the low spec gamer video. So, how amateurs created the world's most popular processor. So this is gonna be a good one. This is gonna be a good story. Let's guys ready?
Night, and a pair of legendary computer wizards receive a phone call from their boss. What he
Legendary
asks of
computer
them is
wizards.
impossible. To build a computer that will change the destiny of an entire generation in 1 week. But what none of them know is that this will be only the beginning. That this will start a chain of events that will get a small group of Cambridge visionaries to set the basis for a technology that would likely affect the lives of every person on Earth. This is that story.
Oh,
It's
shit,
the
it's that.
second half of the 70s in Cambridge,
a little
the
bit,
United
yeah.
Kingdom. And company co-founders Herman Hauser and Chris Curry are trying to figure out how to get their tiny company into some big projects. Chris Curry had, until very recently, been second in command at a local consumer electronics company called Sinclair Radionics, led by the legendary Clive Sinclair,
Sinclair.
which we already covered in a past video with
Yay.
its own set of weird and slightly violent shenanigans. But at the moment, if their intent was to get into the world of microprocessors and home computers, they needed something important: talent. Talented technicians that will make their computer dreams come true. And lucky for them, Herman knew exactly where the best talent pool was. The legendary institution that is the University of Cambridge. And within this university, there was one specific club that was of particular interest to them: the Cambridge University Processor Group, a society of nerds fascinated with the up-and-coming world of processors and the home computer revolution.
The
Around, he was
nerds.
introduced to the most talented students of the group, a PhD student called Steve Ferber, and a shockingly young undergrad, the one and only Sophie Wilson.
Hey.
Ferber was knee-deep in his PhD
The
on aerodynamics and had developed a wealth of mathematical knowledge, and Wilson, for her part, was the resident tech wizard. Her fascination for microprocessors had begun after a few friends told her about a shockingly cheap microprocessor that had just came into the market, the MOS 6502. And with the new talent now under their wings, they set out to make some money. Chris, having observed the growth of Apple computers, was inspired to choose a name that will put them on top of Apple in the phone book, and that will refer to an old-English saying: big oaks from small acorns grow.
Acorn.
Computers was about to start growing into a mighty tree. 1980. As a new decade rolls around, things in Acorn computers are heating up.
Yes, a fully packaged, plug-and-play, ready-to-use.
Well,
home
Jess, that
computer
explains
like the
your,
companies in the United
your
States
question.
are making. No more kits for enthusiasts to put together. We can put a beautiful case around our computers and make it happen.
A case? Chris, how in the world are we going to finance any of this? We don't have the money for that level of a production run.
Don't worry, we're going to make one. Take some nice pictures, put a full-page ad on the best electronics magazine in the country, and people are going to love it so much they're going to send us checks for pre-orders. We will have the funds for production in no time.
This sell first, produce later methodology is something that Curry had learned from his old boss.
It's kind of wild, not gonna lie.
Hauser was dubious. The growing computer market in the UK loved it.
Oh.
And soon, they had the funds to make the Acorn Atom, a completely pre-built and pre-packaged home computer designed around Wilson's preferred MUS 6502 and
It explains
powered
something
by
about
Acorn
yeah,
Basic,
it may.
a highly powerful interpreter for the BASIC programming language
Basic.
that Wilson herself had programmed, and with extra features like network capabilities and the ability to mix machine code with BASIC instructions. It was in many ways superior to the Microsoft BASIC most of the industry will come to rely on. Even while competing with the likes of the ZX80 from Chris Olbas, the product found some modest success. But as the employees of the still small company discuss what to produce next, they find themselves in an unexpected disagreement.
Should we build workstations? Computers are going to be huge in the workspace.
Workstations? Look at all the atoms we sold. We should definitely make another home computer for regular people.
How about this? I can design a computer that uses 2 microprocessors. One microprocessor would be connected to the I/O and sold as a home computer, but when connected to the second microprocessor, it becomes a much more powerful machine that could be used as a workstation.
Wow, you can do that?
And so, development started on the next project.
Modular.
The first half of Sophie's idea and turn it into a home computer codename Proton, with future plans of selling the other half as an expansion to turn it into
That's
a powerful
really cool as a
workstation.
concept.
But the timeline of this project
Are you able
was
to do
about
this?
get radically shorter, thanks to an unexpected organization that would change everything for the country. BBC, the public broadcaster of the UK, was producing a TV program to educate the general public about computers. There was no unifying operating system for them. Computers were a mess of mutually incompatible systems with somewhat unique quirks. So for the program to function, the BBC needed a single flagship computer to center the program around. And this presented an opportunity. Everyone in the UK's computer industry understood what this meant. Whoever got this juicy government contract will get millions of pounds in free publicity and millions of computers sold to schools and universities. Curry's old boss, Clive Sinclair, had jumped at this.
I didn't
with
know
his
that-
trademark
that game
cockiness,
name.
presenting the Sinclair
did.
ZX81 as the obvious runner for this competition. But the flat keyboard, lack of expansion capabilities, and the general attitude from Sinclair had turned the BBC off right away.
Honestly, that
Chris
keyboard.
smelled an opportunity
Sucks.
to again sell first and execute.
Yeah, no, that keyboard is bad.
Our next computer is exactly what you asked for. Lots of expansions and ports, a high-quality keyboard, high performance. We can easily adapt our Proton to whatever the BBC needs.
Can we visit the office to see it next week?
Next week? Yeah, sure. We will be ready.
Now, the problem with this promise is that the Proton was at best on the idea stage, and to convince the team to pull off the insanity of implementing a prototype in a week, they will almost need a miracle. But Hauser had an idea on how to stimulate his workers, something that will become a bit of a legend in tech history circles. And to tell the story, I thought it appropriate to have someone that was there.
This was quite late in the negotiations.
Yo,
with the BBC.
computer
Planned
history.
a visit to Acorn on Friday, and this telephone call happened the weekend before that Friday. We hadn't even designed it. I mean, I had a paper design for the machine, but not a detailed design. Herman rang Sophie.
The cameo is very
Hey,
exciting.
Wilson, can you create a prototype of the Proton by the end of the week for the BBC to check?
End of the week? Are you crazy? That's impossible.
That's weird. Ferber said he could.
Wait, he... what? Maybe he knows something I don't. Okay then?
And then Herman rang me and said,
Hey, Steve, can you create a prototype of the Proton by the end of the week?
A week? Are you drunk, Herman?
Wilson said it was doable.
What? Well, maybe.
so now I it's a long time ago, so I don't trust my own memory and the finer details, but certainly something like that happened.
It took the pair a bit to realize the ruse, but it was too late. They were knee-deep into the project. What followed was one of the most intense weeks in the history of computer development, as the entire team crunched to get the prototype ready in time for the BBC beta. And so
adversarial.
they worked to the last seconds, with Wilson literally programming the last bits of the CRT controller.
Hey, look at the coffee cup.
And Hauser delayed the BBC from coming
Look at the
up
coffee
the
cup.
But the BBC was so impressed that this ragtag team had done more progress in a week than other companies had done in years, that they awarded them the multi-million-pound government contract. Now, with proper time and money, the prototype needed to turn into a complete product. The massive amount of chips used by this computer needed to be simplified, with the help of a couple of semi-custom chips built using what was called gate arrays, where the chips had a bunch of pre-made electronic components, and then a layer of connections was designed to turn them into a semi-custom circuit. A lot of responsibility will fall into Ferber, who, under pressure, will turn out to be a particularly skilled circuit designer.
Yes, the BBC Micro was launched with two front ULAs, one for the video system and one for the serial interface and cassette interface.
Gamer browser.
Long-time viewers might remember Ferranti, as it was the same technology and the same company that made Sinclair computers possible. And they were also the subject of a SideQuest video, but this time around, the technology brought forward some issues.
We got gamers
and
in
the serial interface chip worked fine, but the video processor, the VidProc as we call it, gave us all sorts of problems. It was quite temperature sensitive. The problem was that the video processor was running at speeds which were quite close to the limits of the technology. One of the characteristics of BBC Micro was that it would work fine when you turned it on, but sort of 10 minutes later it would heat up, and then you'd start getting pixel breakup on the screen due to the video processor.
Jeez.
And so they were saved by a second source of a similar technology, BLSI, an American company. They used a different fabrication technology that was way more resistant to overheating, and they will turn out to be a powerful ally soon enough. All the pieces were in place to power the new computer that will be called the BBC
Micro,
the official computer for the BBC's educational program that will sell millions and turned into a platform that will teach the entire UK population about computers. But if you remember earlier in the video, what had been proposed was a two-part computer, where the BBC Micro was just the first part, ready to be connected to a second processor to turn into a powerful workstation. And now
this
that
is
they
actually
have the money,
the BBC.
the momentum,
Yeah,
and the
it
name
was the funding. The funding was by the BBC.
With connecting a second processor to the Micro, they discovered something unexpected. Newer and supposedly superior processors like the Motorola 6800 and the National Semiconductor 32016 were super complicated devices with extensive instruction sets. Wilson and Ferber had even traveled to the National Semiconductor Laboratory in Israel and were surprised by the complex and fully staffed facilities needed to make this piece.
Israel was pretty much what you expect, a large American company with a large setup and a large team, but having repeated problems debugging.
And yet, in reality, the practical improvements they offered in performance were minimal, especially in terms of being able to make use of faster memory. The one test that actually gave them any positive results was just another 6502 running on a faster clock. Were they missing something? Given this result, all hopes were placed on a successor to the 6502. As Wilson and Ferber traveled to Arizona to visit the labs of Western Digital Center, directed by one of the original design members of the 6502, specifically this guy from a previous video, they were surprised to discover something different.
Yes, that was really quite interesting. We went to Phoenix, Arizona, to the Western Design Center, so-called, expecting to find classic shiny American offices with big glass windows.
I love the tech cinematic universe of Low Spec Gamer.
A bungalow,
very good,
in the Arizona suburbs, and they were using school pupils to design basic gate cells and so on Apple computers.
Their whole operation was less sophisticated than anything Acorn had. Maybe they had seriously overestimated the technical capabilities necessary to create a simple microprocessor. So what if What if they could design their own microprocessor that will finally satisfy them? As the idea was communicated with the rest of the team back home, Hauser realized that he had recently read something that fit perfectly into this issue.
Okay.
What is this?
I've been tracking papers and press releases coming out of Berkeley and Stanford on a new approach for processor design.
The approach was, of course, the reduced instruction set computer.
Hey,
The
risks.
idea that instead of making increasingly complex processors with lots of instructions, make something similar with a smaller but much faster set of simple
Risk
instructions.
processor.
And then use
Yay.
the simple instructions to build complex ones for a much simpler and faster design. And simpler instructions meant a simple processor that could be designed by a small team. Oh my god, they could actually pull this off. They could design a chip just like they did for the chips on the BBC Micro and have VLSI Technologies fabricate them. Still believing that they will run into some inevitable roadblock, the team got busy into designing what they codenamed ARM. Acorn RISC Machine. Yes, that is absolutely what the acronym meant in the beginning.
Wait, what?
Wilson designed the instructions.
Wait.
She wanted to create something
It's
that
made
was
out of
powerful
2
and
acronyms?
And then Ferber implemented
That's
such
illegal.
instructions as circuits, carefully simulating the
You can't
results
do
with
that.
a reference model.
Nested
programmed in
acronyms.
850 lines of BBC Basic. He did, however, run into an extra requirement that presented an unexpected limitation.
Look, if we want any chance of keeping the educational market happy, we need to
That's why
reduce
Acorn
costs
is
as much as
everywhere.
possible.
What do you mean?
It makes me feel very smug.
The chip
It's
has to
very
fit in a
cool.
50-cent plastic package. It cannot have any additional expensive cooling. Any other packaging will cost 20 times more. Do you understand?
Ferber was shocked by the draconian requirement. To get the chip working on a plastic envelope meant that the chip will have to produce less than a single watt of heat. Additionally, the tools and models they had for calculating how much heat every element of the design will generate were really archaic and inaccurate. So they will have
slide
to
rule.
estimate and leave a hefty security margin. April 26, 1985, the day everyone in the company was waiting for, finally arrives. The first samples of the first ARM chip had arrived from VLSI Technologies. After a couple of small issues in the test board are fixed, the computer's plugged in and it boots running BBC Basic. The company collectively holds its breath as a test command is typed. The command is executed and out comes the output. Hello world, I am an ARM. Screams of victory roll through the office. A bottle of champagne is open. It works. And running extremely cool at that. Given the strict heat limits, Ferber estimates that by definition,
This story gets
it will
absolutely
also
wild.
be really power efficient. So curious, he connects a meter to it and measures how much power it was pulling. 0 watts. What? That makes no sense. Dismayed, he discovers that the power to the processor was not even connected. But how?
What?
The processor was unequivocally working, so where in the world was it getting power from?
So apparently the chip was using 0 power. Now,
What?
clearly this can't happen.
What? What?
Um,
What?
And a bit of investigation proved that I'd actually failed to make the connection through to the chip. But the chip was still executing code quite happily. And the only explanation for this is that all chips have diodes on the I/O pins to protect the chips from electrostatics. So if you walk across a nylon carpet carrying the chip, you're less likely to blow it up. And so if there were inputs from external chips at the 5 volts, which is the positive rail, then that could power the chip through these protection diodes. And that must have been what was happening.
The device was so extraordinarily power efficient, beyond
That's
anything that we had expected
nuts!
from the design, that it was running from leaked current alone.
Oh
With
my
a device
God.
this powerful and power efficient, maybe they could aim for much
Yo!
more than an expansion to the BBC Micro or a next generation computer. Maybe it could be something more. It will
Just
take
running
many
off
more
residual
twists and
power,
turns
that's
for that to become
wild.
the chip inside all our phones, and we might get there in a future video, but one thing I can tell you for sure is that while ARM will become a thing, Acorn will not be as lucky. In fact, I'm willing to bet that for a good number of you viewers outside the UK, you have never heard of them before. Have you ever wondered
Nikola
why?
Tesla
Why
as
could this
processor,
incredibly
yeah.
forward-thinking computer never make it to markets like the US? Well, that is a story that I explored together with Professor Ferber in this month's episode of SideQuest, my side series where I explored tangential stories.
No, that was it? That was nuts. I wasn't even expecting the power efficiency thing to come up like that. That was cool. I mean, the BBC still makes computers. Let me see here. What was it? What was it called? A bit? Yeah, the BBC microbit. They still make computer like educational computers. That's gonna get me
It's a pocket-sized computer that lets
Nope.
you get creative with digital. You can code, customize, and control your microbit from anywhere.
I don't want to get copyright strike from an instrumental of Uptown Funk. Just read the subtitles and ignore the rest.
They get really creative.
Please.
Motion detector.
Yeah.
You could create
Yeah.
or a flick football
Yeah.
game. Scoreboard.
It's okay, you won't get copyright if we mute the stream. No, but the problem is that I won't get money from that. I won't get viewers from that if you mute the stream.
Plants, or use Bluetooth to take photos with your phone, and control the music player. And you can customize the microbit in any way you can imagine. It's really anything you want it to be.
I think it to be like a robot.
It's quite different to any other technology I've sort of used before.
You just have fun with it.
I can control my tablet. You can make games, you can take pictures, kind of something that senses movement. And you can just
Like, I haven't used these, but it's really cute. 7 years? They still make these. The microbit, the BBC still makes these, and they're very good. They're very adorable, small micro. Was that okay? We're gonna ignore that. Oh yeah, this is just a little silly video. We got a relaxing break here. I turn a nut into a tiny adjustable wrench. I don't remember who posted that. Jess? Ah, yes, it is nut time. This is the relaxing ASMR content portion of today's stream. Lathe. I don't even think there's narration in this video, is there? I feel like there isn't. So we got a ring. That's nice. Nah, he does not speak. May put up text sometimes. All right, yeah. So this is gonna be the small break. This is the moment of zen for us, I guess. Ow! Hey, I said moment of zen. Come on. I'm looking over there. I'm scared if something's gonna hit me. I keep looking. Straightening by clamping. Okay. Clamp. So now from nut, we have ingot. Is he going to plane this thing? Please don't tell me he's going to plane it. He made the nut a stick, yeah. Instagram grab hole went down. If my model could do a thumbs up, I'd be giving you a thumbs up right now. So yeah. Cutting material off, okay. This is a really well... I mean, this is just kind of a piece of metal, so like... I don't know why, it looks really nice milled. I'm actually kind of curious how they turn this into some fashion of a How does this turn into a wrench? An adjustable wrench at that. It is really cute so far, though. Turned out the guy who made it went on to work for a Huh. I know. If you're smart with one thing in technology, it kind of expands further out. It's great. That's a nice, satisfying piece of metal. It honestly looks great right now. Card by drill. This is good ASMR. I'm down with this. Super glue. Oh, and then he's gonna cut it out on a lathe. Okay, that counts. Ah. Why is this such a This is a really satisfying noise. Oh, I'm down with this. Okay. Baby. Yeah, tiny baby. Tiny baby. Kind of looks like a flat plug, yeah. Kinda. I want to see what this looks like all nice and polished up, though. The final result's going to be good. Filing. Oh my god, you're filing it to a round shape. Why not put it on a... Why not put it on, like, a lathe? This is a lot of work. Why aren't you putting it on a lathe? You're adding chamfers to... Oh my god. I always love when people put a lot of effort into just things like this. It's my favorite thing. Yo. I wonder how much time he took to make this. Like, I wonder, like, if he has, like, a listed time on it. Oh. Yo, finishing. Yeah, we're doing the finishing sandings. It looks so... It's a very baby screwdriver. I mean, not screwdriver. Wrench. It's an adjustable wrench. Brush finish. Yo. That finish is really good. Remaining of the nut. Are you gonna make another nut? Ding. Hey, okay. Yay, lathe. This is a nice video to play specifically. Hold on. I'm gonna test that out really quickly. This content got so much better. Oh, this made things so much better. Dun 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 dun. Oh, it's done! Look how cute it is! What will this be used for? A tiny mouse. The opportunities are limitless, but honestly, I see it as a very complicated fidgeting tool. It looks like a very complicated fidget tool, and I'm kind of okay with the complicated fidget tool concept. Does it work? Does it work? Does it work? Does it work? Yo, it works! Yay! Oh, it's adorable. That was worth it. That was very much worth it. I love that. That was a good one. Okay. Let me see. Actually, I don't like this one. Let's do okay, let's do this one. This video is about Lego. Like the funny plastic bricks that you step on and are a choking hazard for ages 5 and up. These guys. Let's learn about the history of the plastic bricks. The funny plastic bricks.
This right here, it's not a Lego, but I dare you to tell the difference.
Lego. Brick.
This is actually a replica of a KittyCraft self-locking building brick. And it snaps together just like that. KittyCraft earned these patents for bricks that built cafes and cranes and fire stations.
Oh, that's a cute
so why
crane.
is Lego the name you know for plastic bricks?
Lego is here.
The story only makes sense if you learn about a forgotten technological breakthrough and a marketing epiphany.
Thank you for entertaining my odd videos
Once and
days.
for all.
Yeah.
Why Lego won?
This is an N. It's supposed to be an N. Okay. Lego's hard. Don't judge me.
It's a terrible N. You should have moved it one
Give
over.
you some background here. I'm not an adult fan of Lego. I'm a new fan of Lego. I didn't really have these when I was a kid, but I got some for my son, and I started wondering, why are these so good at what they do?
Why aren't you an adult
How
fan
did
of Lego?
Become Lego. And
They're
then I
good.
learned about KittyCraft.
KittyCraft.
In the 1940s, an English toy maker named Hilary Page ran KittyCraft. It produced a lot of stuff, but its toys included self-locking building blocks that look shockingly like Lego bricks. KittyCraft blocks encouraged creative design from plastic, like this man and woman. As early as 1939, Page patented a version of interlocking blocks
Gendered
that
Legos in
snapped in
1930s.
place. That was
It's
actually
happening again.
new at the time. Even Lego built its toys out of wood, but they quickly followed the KittyCraft template. You can see that here. In fact, the connection, it was not a coincidence. The first Lego plastic mold was the same one that KittyCraft used. And early Lego bricks were almost identical to KittyCraft blocks, with a few minor differences. They slightly changed the scale and the studs, but as you can see, they were pretty similar. Early Kittycraft blocks had little slots in the side for windows and other attachments. So did early Lego bricks. From top to bottom,
Leggers.
these were very similar to Kittycraft blocks. So
Rip
with such a
off.
simple idea that had kind of already been done.
It happened. They're
how did
rip
Lego
off.
win? It gets headlined as Lego stole the idea from Kittycraft. But to find the truth, now that I have my little Lego examination studio set up, you need to turn the Kittycraft block upside down to see some of its problems. It's hollow on the inside.
It's naked.
Now, look at a Lego today. Do you see the difference? The design of the early Kittycraft brick and Lego brick had some problems. These slots in the side, they weren't just for windows.
Oh, dang.
They
Yeah.
helped the brick flex so that it could snap into place. That compensated for mediocre manufacturing. The bottom being an empty box, well, that was actually a big negative. That means that Kittycraft blocks simply didn't grip all that well, and they could warp without reinforcement. Lego made tweaks from the beginning, changing the scale and studs slightly. They got rid of the side slots in 1954, but in the mid to late 1950s, they also
I saw this
added
in your
a
take
key innovation.
appreciation of engineering look around. Also,
Tubes in the center.
yes.
Lego says that these tubes are the reason Legos have such good clutch power.
Clutch
The
power.
studs more points of contact than just the edges of the block. So even if Lego did imitate Kittycraft's initial design, in the 1950s, they changed it in crucial ways that made Lego bricks so much better. This gave Lego a patent to protect its product and a real innovation that
Also,
led
yeah.
the company forward.
Very
I think marketing
patentable.
can totally be overrated, but I think that the way that Lego thought about their product in the 1950s, it was a key differentiator. Folks, it's about to get Mad Men in here.
So, have you figured out a way to work the wheel into it?
We know it's hard because wheels aren't really seen as exciting technology, even though they are the original.
Lego. It's a shortening of two Danish words.
Lego.
But the appeal is international. Under the leadership of Gottfried Kurt Christensen, they changed priorities in the 1950s. Kittycraft always had a bunch of toys like these pyramid rings and distractions
Okay.
like these miniatures ultimately bankrupted the company.
Oh, those are cute.
Lego was able to focus. Automatic binding bricks became Lego bricks, Lego Merston, and it was understood as a Lego system. Instead of building a portfolio of different, disconnected toys, Christensen built something that worked together. Like a town. The town
Lego
became
Town.
a place for people and bricks to work together toward a common goal. A goal of creation.
Brick.
Christensen developed 6 rules of play. Limited in size, without setting limitations for imagination. Affordable, simple,
Nice.
durable, and offering rich variations. For girls, for boys, for every age. A classic among toys, without the need of renewal. And easy to distribute.
I mean, it's
Those
plastic.
innovations quickly became institutional. An in-house group called Lego Futura created something new. They called it
Have I ever mentioned? I love this old wheel format. Like, these were cool. I love these. I don't like the modern Lego tires. These look adorable, though, right?
an in-house group called Lego Futura created something new. They called it the wheel. Lego. They're shortened from the Danish. It means play well.
Leg got. Leg.
These two things together, bold engineering and platform marketing, they were breakthroughs.
Hey, kids, look.
Hey! kids.
But I have.
Oh my God! Look at those camels.
Which one was more important? Was it more important that Lego built a system of play, or that it tweaked the blocks until they were perfect? I think without the engineering, without the tubes, you don't have the same company. The quest to reimagine Lego bricks from a Kittycraft clone to something new and way, way better, that is what makes Lego Lego. You can see the influences of both approaches in the company today. The current CEO has refocused the company by reminding everybody that they are all about selling bricks. They make it clear that Lego still cares about its platform. That's why Lego won, not because it got lucky or strong-armed the competition or took an idea from Kittycraft. They won because they never stopped building.
That's nice.
All right, thank you for watching. This video really is inspired by me checking out my son's Lego set and being like, wow, these things are awesome. Why are...
It was like, it's super nice. I love that video. Thank you, Phil. Wonder what the cross support... Yeah, it's the cross supports were for structural integrity. So they don't, like, collapse on themselves or warp. Because, like, you know, the concept of, like, illegal Lego building techniques? The reason why they're considered illegal is that they put stress on the part that will eventually cause it to warp. That's why they're called illegal. Oh, I mean the ones that are connected to the middle tube? Yeah, I don't... Again, it's just more like a redundant, like, structure thing. I think it's just more of like a redundant structure thing. I can't think of any other reason. Anyway, that was a good video. I think we only got one more left in my little list here. So, I'll save that one for later. The last one is about pudding. Like pudding. Which type of pudding? Yes.
Is blood pudding. This is Jello pudding.
Pudding!
In what universe are these two different types of the same thing? The universe you and I are living in, friends. It's the universe where the word pudding, at least originally, meant sausage. Pudding means sausage. Or it used to, and it still does in some parts of the Anglosphere, such as in Old Birmingham. Now, there is some dispute over the origin of the word pudding.
Yo, that looks
There's
burnt.
a possible Germanic origin.
This is a
It's
pudding.
from an old Germanic word pud, which is the ancestor of the modern English word pod. A seed
Pud.
pod is kind of like a sausage. It's a payload wrapped inside a casing that swells as it grows. The Proto-Germanic word pud meant to swell, and in that sense it is the ancestor of the modern English slang pud, which refers to a part of the human anatomy that is prone to swelling.
What?
Here's the most popular etymological theory on the origin of the word pudding.
Huh?
This is the story the Oxford English Dictionary will tell you. OED, among others, says that pudding comes from the French word for sausage, introduced to England, like so many other words, via the Norman conquest about 1,000 years ago. And that French word for sausage is, of course, boudin, which is from the Latin word for sausage, botellus. Boudin as in boudin noir, black sausage made with blood. The blood turns black when you cook it. The Brits still call it black sausage today because they call it black pudding, and pudding means sausage because pudding and boudin are the same word. Confused? Here, let me hold the door for you. Boudin, 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 pudding, 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 pudding. Nobody knows for sure if that's the origin of pudding, but we do know that the earliest surviving written uses of the word pudding referred to meat and grains and seasonings and such stuffed into an intestine, which served as an edible container in which to cook an amorphous mass of scraps and bits that would otherwise have been very hard to roast over.
Ooh, that's a good looking
Stuffing
sausage.
those little bits of meat and grains and such into a casing also presents you with an opportunity to preserve it rather than cook it and consume it immediately. For example, if you mix a little bit of salt in with everything, well, you will have created the conditions necessary for lactofermentation. I have a whole video about that in the description. It's used to preserve meat. Anyway, that's where we get the other modern English word for sausage, which is from a French word, which is from a Latin word, which means to season with salt. In American English these days, we pretty much only use sausage to refer to sausage. But in the Anglo-Celtic Isles, they still call a sausage a pudding sometimes, though I gather it has an old-fashioned ring to it, and it usually just refers to black and or white puddings featured in traditional English and Irish breakfasts. All that explains why we call a sausage a pudding. The question remains, why do we call this a pudding?
Not gonna lie, I'm now really hungry for like some black sausage. Like blood sausage. Better than you'd think it sounds like. It doesn't taste like blood. It's very seasoned. It's very good. Now I want some. I'm hungry.
That's going to take the rest of the video to explain.
There's cheesecake in the fridge.
80,000 hours. What will take
80,000
hours on average is your entire working life. Your career hours. Anyway, why do we call this and so many other desserts a sausage? Pudding means sausage. Well, I think it helps to remember that until the miracle of the Industrial Revolution, most families might have had only one or two primitive cooking.
I had no idea there were different kinds of
maybe
sauce.
none at all,
Yeah.
and not a lot of bowls and spoons and such for dealing with liquid foods. So when you're trying to cook some amorphous mass of loose, wet stuff, it might be beneficial to stuff all of that into the intestines of the animal that you're presently trying to eat, or maybe into one of its other parts, like its stomach or its bladder.
Haggis.
As in haggis.
Hey.
Chieftain of the pudding race, Robert Burns called it. A biological casing is elastic, so it can expand as the oats inside there hydrate and swell. It is edible, arguably, and it's both water and fire safe, so you can cook over a fire or in the one pot of water that you have. It's great. On the other hand, natural casings are gross. They can be hard to come by. They're not reusable. An alternative started to get more and more popular as the early Industrial Revolution came up with its first killer app, and that was, of course, cheap fabric. A plain linen, or in this case cotton cloth, could serve as a reusable, inedible casing. Google pudding cloth, it's a thing. Step one might have been boiling the cloth. This cleans and sterilizes it from its last use and engorges the fibers with water, which will help us to form an almost waterproof seal. This is a documented historical practice right here. I'm rubbing a thin layer of wheat flour into the hot, wet cloth. This actually forms a thin layer of dough to seal the cloth. Here's the earliest written English pudding recipes I can find, 1615, a new book of cookery by John Morrell. I'm making his Cambridge pudding, which calls for breadcrumbs and flour. Recipes from this era never specify quantities, so I'm just guessing. For fat, he calls for minced suet. Suet is this hard, highly saturated intra-abdominal fat, usually around the kidneys, but I'm sure this visceral fat will do. Mince that as instructed. Morrell also calls for an assortment of dried fruits, and since I don't have that much beef fat, I'll compensate with some butter, more dried fruit.
I'll take the dried fruit.
Seasoning, he wants cinnamon and nutmeg and fine sugar. I don't know if this is supposed to be a sweet or a savory dish, or even if John Morrell considered that distinction the way that I do. He probably didn't. He calls for new milk, unfermented, and then some eggs to make it all solidify. He doesn't call for salt, but I'm going to guess salt sometimes went without saying back then, as it can today. Stir that up and 17th century
That
English
actually
food. So much better than that evil modern corporate Soylent Green we choked down today, right? Oh, here's a nice touch. It tells you to stuff a little ball of butter right in the center of the pudding. Surprise! Tie that up.
Sounds great.
Early accounts of steamed puddings were really just hung near a fire like this. A very wet mixture could steam itself until cooked. But John Morrell says to boil this until solid all the way through, which took like 3 hours. Look how much it swelled, like a pud. Hey, check the water. That flour on the inside of our cloth seems to have kept most of the precious nutrients from leaking out, with the exception for the fat. We lost a lot of fat. The fact that the pudding was buoyant in the water means that it naturally cooked into a smooth, round shape, which probably would have looked pleasing and fancy to people accustomed to factory perfection.
This is Putty's great-grandfather.
Which lots of old recipes tell you to do.
I see the resemblance. See you?
It's a
I see
little
it.
wobbly, kind of like Jell-O pudding. I guess it's the same basic thing. Milk and sugar given substance with starch. Our butter surprise in the middle melted away. It didn't gush as intended. That's pretty easy to eat, even without...
It does, not gonna lie, this does look like kind of nice. Like, it doesn't look like a blob. It just kind of looks nice.
Any
I like it.
utensils, and I gotta say, it's surprisingly good. It's basically a giant dumpling, and I like dumplings. The little dried fruits provide heterogeneity. Not bad. So maybe think of this as the transition between the sausage and the pudding cup. Cooks all over the Anglo-Celtic Isles developed all kinds of sweet and savory dishes consisting of wet masses congealed into a solid, and they called them puddings, like Christmas pudding or this spotted dick. And then in the 20th century, the word pudding split into two very different branches on either side of the Atlantic. Over on the eastern shores, the word pudding came to mean any kind of dessert, or rather I think it meant the phase of the meal, the course of the meal that is the dessert, that is the sweet. That's the pudding. Then over here on the western shores, the American use of the word pudding got almost entirely hijacked by the Jell-O company that makes pre-packaged gelatin desserts like this one, but they also make pre-packaged starch-thickened desserts, dairy and starch desserts, and they call those Jell-O
pudding.
This is almost exclusively what we use the word pudding to refer to here in the United States today. It's basically an instant custard with the more expensive and perishable eggs replaced by starch. Use eggs instead and you have flan, the Latin American equivalent. Hey, Spanish speakers, would you consider flan a kind of pudding? Anyway, that's how sausage became pudding. Replace the meat with dairy, replace the oats or whatever with cornstarch, replace the intestinal sheath with a plastic sheath, and that's Jell-O pudding. This is such a compelling ad for them, they should really be paying me. Honestly, I love Jell-O pudding, and I love sausage. It's all good, and it's all part of the same proud tradition.
Cool, right? It's just you go from like, okay, we're gonna stuff meat stuff in a little intestine, and now it just means we're going to shove stuff into a container and cook it. That's so great. So wait, yeah, haggis is a pudding. Pudding is a pudding. Sausage is a pudding. Is meatloaf technically a pudding? The only part that's missing is the actual casing. Is meatloaf a pudding? I'm gonna let you guys sleep on that one. Anyway, we've already ran out of time. And we got like through a lot of stuff. So thank you guys for tuning in. I very much appreciate it. Of course, since it is Friday, it is unfortunately the end of my stream week, but don't let that upset you, because we got next week to go on too. So, but yeah. That was a very good Finding Out Friday, everybody. Hi, Goliath. I know, bad timing, but hey, there's always next week, you know? This was a very great episode, I'm not gonna lie. It was very fun. Alright. I don't think I have people to send you over to. Let me double check. I don't think I do. Yeah, I don't think I do. So what I'm gonna do instead is just go do sleep early. You can just go. You know, the usual. Anyway, make sure you guys say before you go, have a wonderful rest of your night. And see ya.